welcome everybody to our program tonight. I'm Dr. Greg Nicola, President of the Laguna Beach Historical Society. This is our first, I believe it's our first, program in the Suzy Q. So we're kind of getting the feel of it. It's important because that means we can have water and snacks, which you'll find in the back of the room. So that's an upgrade right there. I did have one little housekeeping issue beside this water in the back, is that I'm told that there are microphones scattered everywhere around you, and we're booking the room. So if you say something, like a comment, it'll be picked up by the videographer, where you may not think anybody can hear it. So we're asking to keep your comments quiet and whisper so the microphone doesn't pick that up. So I know what you might be, right, I know what you might be saying is that, wow, you know, this is a lot of work and it takes a lot of money to do this. The rent of this room must be very high. This is Laguna Beach. The water and cookies don't come cheap. Our honorarium to our speaker must have been 5 figures. So you're probably saying, how can I help defray the cost of these great programs? Well, since you asked, I will tell you, you can become a member of our society. It's a mere $25 or more if you want to be generous. And Johanna in the very back would be thrilled to take your membership if you'd like to join us tonight. If you're already a member or don't really feel like joining, there's a jar back there. Throw a Lincoln or a Hamilton or a Jackson or something in there, and that would help us a little bit defray some of the costs. And if financially you don't think it's your ability, we do always look for volunteers and docents for a variety of things, especially our bungalow. I'm told the last Sunday of this month has an opening we're trying to fill. So again, Ed's here somewhere in the middle, but Johanna also could guide you there. So feel free to let us know if you want to do any of those things for us. Come by and visit the bungalow. Spring is a great time. In the winter, it's kind of rainy and cold. In the summer, we have all the tourists bearing down on it, but this is a great time. Go to Whole Foods, come next door, say hi, check out the new display. We have a new display. It's on the hip district. As I said, I was a doctor. I'm thinking it's like a thing about hips. It's actually the hip district, which will be different art and things like that. Our talk tonight is, as you can tell, on the beaches of Laguna. And I thought, you know, a lot of towns lost their meaning. Like, I recently was driving through Hawaiian Gardens, and there was no gardens anywhere. And I've been to Garden Grove, and there's no more orange groves anywhere in Garden Grove. And but Laguna Beach, we really have beaches. I have a lot of out-of-town friends who come to stay and go to Disneyland, and they'll say, we want to go to a beach while we're visiting Disneyland. What beach should we go to? And I usually say, well, if you want to surf City's Huntington Beach. Want to rollerblade and ride bikes on the boardwalk in Newport is where you want to be. But if you want to see the most beautiful beaches in Southern California, you come to Laguna. And we're going to find out more about that tonight. Our speaker is Eric Jessen, as the sign says. Eric wanted me I expect a bigger applause after I'm introducing him. He wanted me to introduce him by saying he fill up a turnip truck and give him the microphone, but I'm not going to do that. Eric graduated from Cal State Long Beach in physical geography, and then he founded the Biosphere Landscape Company, and he also at the same time founded the Rockledge Planning Associates, acting as a consultant to Howard Hughes think tank. In 1975, he assumed a position of being Chief Officer of Acquisition, Planning and Development for the County of Orange, Harbors, Beaches, and Park. So he's very well qualified on that. He held that position for 30 years. He served as chairman of so many things you get tired of hearing about it. South Laguna Water and Sewer District, South Coast Water District, the Laguna Beach Historical Resources Advisory Board, and the Southern California Water District board member for 6 years. He served as the chairman of the South Laguna Water and Sewer Advisory Board. Most important, though, for those that know him, Eric is a fine gentleman. When I joined the Historical Society, I was brand new, wasn't sure what to do. Of all the members, he sought me out. He offered any help and assistance, and I've used him for that the last few years, more often than I probably should have. So join me in welcoming someone I consider a friend, a colleague, and a mentor, and a true Laguna Beach historian, Eric Jessen.
Thank you, everybody, for coming tonight. I'd like to dedicate tonight's program to the memory of a quiet giant in our community. My neighbor, Dr. Maury Granger, founding professor of the biology at the UCI School of Medicine and the founder of the Arthritis National Research Foundation. He died yesterday. We are going to fly down our coastline looking at a few of Greg O'Loughlin's stunning photos recently taken from a helicopter. And I thought I'd start by pointing out a few things and make a couple of comments before showing a new documentary video on the creation of some of our public beaches and related parks. Back in the old Laguna Homestead days, private oceanfront properties extended to the mean high tide line, the exact location of which actually takes 17 and a half years of daily surveying to locate. Well, no one had the time or the resources to be standing out on the water's edge with a tripod doing nonstop surveying. So back then, survey priorities were largely focused on staking the landside lot corners and for also inland surveying, like on the Irvine Ranch, where agriculture was king. The mean high tide line is the demarcation between private property and the state tidelands. But in the old days, landowners really didn't pay much attention to it. People pretty much just used the beaches any way they wanted without much fuss. Now and then they'd get shooed away. Smith Cliffs View Park is located within this thick linear forest of Italian stone pines right here. The Smith Cliffs community is located right here. And here is Bootlegger's Cove below it, below the overlook. And here is, of course, Emerald Bay Beach and Swanson Park within Emerald Bay. Here is the path through the trees from North Coast Boulevard. And after the park was constructed, it remained closed, awaiting acceptance by the city. And it took people like Ann Weisbrod and others to get the city to accept the ownership and open it up. Ann is in the audience tonight. There was a huge bird perched on the cliffs in Bootlegger's Cove a few weeks ago when we shot the video there, and we actually think that it was an American bald eagle. It's isolated enough that sensitive species can use this area without feeling like they're going to be harassed by people. Here at the end of Crescent Bay Drive, which is right here, we have Crescent Bay Point Park, with the very inland tip of Seal Rocks right here at the bottom of the photograph. And here is McKnight Drive, which is the general location where Poncho Barnes had her landing strip. And yes, there were at least one airplane crash that I know of, probably more than one. Now, there we go. Our richly textured shoreline was a major draw for the plein air painters to settle in Laguna, where there remains an inextricable relationship between art and the sea, which continues to evolve, just like every fall when the art museum goes out and does a three-dimensional extravaganza either in the water or along the main beach. Now, some of you may remember my Edgar Payne The Scenic Journey program a few years ago, where I was tasked with finding the spots on the ground where Payne painted his canvases. Solving the location for Eternal Surge took almost 4 years, because I had this, it's just rocks awash in the water. There's no shoreline visible to get an idea of where it was in town, so it required traipsing through the surf under stormy conditions, high tide, medium tide, low tide, from Three Arch Bay to Irvine Cove. And we finally found it where the arrow is pointing. Those are the rocks right there in what is known as Howard's Cove right here, which is between the twin points of the former Continental Estate. Now, when you're driving south on the Coast Highway, the first house on the ocean, just past the Montage, is a really nifty mid-century modern house. And it's on a very distinct angle. It's almost on a 45-degree angle to Coast Highway, whereas all the rest of the houses are perpendicular to the shoreline. And the reason why that is because if you draw that arrow across the sand, just like I have, this was the difference between the private ownership in the former Treasure Island Treasure Park Beach, Trailer Park Beach, and the public Aliso Beach. So that was the dividing line between public and private ownership. Now, tonight, part one focuses mostly on county-owned beaches because the research is done as to how they were acquired for public use and related milestones. Part two is going to require at least another year's worth of research to determine the details pertaining to places like Crescent Bay, Shaw's Cove, Main Beach, Woods Cove, Victoria Beach, how they were actually acquired. Were they explicitly dedicated on tract maps? Were they not dedicated and the public just started using them, which is an implied dedication, and some of those technicalities. And we'll be presenting that program probably a little more than a year from now. This is main Aliso Beach here. There's the mouth of Aliso Creek. Here's Camel Point, and it's at this location where the arrow is that the original beach stairway to Camel Point Beach is located, that was constructed of native San Onofre breccia rocks sometime around 1924. And you'll hear about that in the video. It's actually, we believe, to be the very first public beach access dedication right away in the entire history of the state of California. Now, we get to some fun stuff here. Note the presence of tent camping on Aliso Beach with not a single car in view. And the reason why is because what you're looking at up here is the old coast road, which is way high up on the slope, okay? And then, a couple of years later, in 1926, when the state highway department built the new coast highway, which in the beginning was only 2 lanes wide, and you'll notice it's still dirt, it hadn't been paved. Look at all the cars on the beach. So that's what facilitated vehicular access, because the old coast road did not lead to the beach per se. You'll hear more about Aliso Rock and Lagoon in the video, but the current historic bridge in the picture was constructed when Coast Boulevard was widened to 4 lanes, which was just a few years after the original new 2-lane highway. And the 2-lane bridge that was there actually had 3 arches in it, and it's thought to be clad inside of this old historic bridge. Wow. There's a famous William Wendt painting of the 3-arched bridge. Now here is where we built the public stairway in the late 1980s at Table Rock Beach. And there's also an unimproved public right-of-way for another access if we needed it, down Sea Bluff Lane between two houses to the top of the cliff where a stair tower could be built, but that would be redundant because we really only need one for this particular location. The main cove is called Table Rock, or sometimes Bluff Drive Cove. And the little cove right here is called Secret Cove. And that's generally the name that is colloquially used to refer to the whole thing. Now, word has it that a lot of kids in town were actually conceived there. It's also where dead whales sometimes float in and have to be towed out to sea. That's happened several times. Over time, particularly with the development of the 19-mile-long, 25,000-acre Aliso Creek watershed, storm runoff from hard urban surfaces such as roads and parking lots and roofs in places like Lake Forest and Aliso Viejo has scoured and deepened the creek and its tributaries. A single storm event in the mid-'80s alone lowered the floor of Wood Canyon almost 30 feet in the Mallard Marsh area. So what that means is that a lot more sand gets blown out onto the beaches from the mouth of Aliso Creek. And by examining historic photographs, the beaches appear to be growing in width because of this process. Now, a little known fact. When I first went to work for Harbors, Beaches, and Parks, my boss was the harbor engineer, a licensed civil engineer. So he was full of all kinds of interesting facts. So he told me a little secret that I'm going to share with you. And I want you to be sure and remember this, because it's totally superfluous and it'll make for fun, idle conversation when you have nothing else to say to your friends on the beach. 95% of beach sand originates from inland soils and bluff erosion, just like I told you. Sand being blown out to the ocean from erosion of the canyon. Where does the other 5% come from? Where does the other 5% of the sand come from? It's crushed seashells and coral. Okay? That's a worldwide general civil engineering assumption, regardless of where you are. Here's the location of an unimproved right-of-way, public right-of-way, leading into Totoaba Bay, which is at the foot of 5th Avenue. And now, the only way that the public can get there is either by trespassing on private land or by walking up coast at low tide from Thousand Steps Beach. Thousand Steps Beach is actually two cells, 9th Avenue Cove and Paradise Cove, sometimes called 10th Avenue Cove, and this is the location of the famous Thousand Steps stairway with the residence. Jessen dedicated the first strip of land paralleling. There was an old wooden stairway here first. It was private. It only served the residents in this area when they construed this to be a private beach. And guess who in town dedicated a 5-foot wide strip of land, hundreds of feet long, between Coast Highway on the north side of the old wooden stairway to help the county gain a public foothold into getting access into Thousand Steps Beach? Greg McGillivray. Just before he sold, I don't know if it was just before, but it was before he sold the property that he owned adjacent to the stairs to David Zink. This is also a good slide to mention the South Coast Water District's $102 million budgeted sewer tunnel renovation project that is currently underway deep inside the ocean cliffs. If you drive down Coast Highway at 4th Avenue on the inland side, you'll see a vacant lot with a lot of big pipes and vents and stuff sticking out. They've drilled a vertical shaft there, 104 feet deep. They've drilled a new tunnel under the Coast Highway and under the the Laguna Lido condominiums and tapped into the old 1954 tunnel, and they're enlarging it and laying a new sewer line. And you can ask me more about that if you're interested after the program. Now here's Paradise Cove, right here, the south end of what we call Thousand Steps Beach. And many of you might be surprised to know that Paradise Cove is one of the largest beaches in town. It's probably the next largest beach after Main Beach. It might be neck and neck with Crescent Bay. I haven't gotten my measuring wheel out to check. And here is the Bechtel Mansion that was constructed at the foot of 10th Avenue right there. Now here is Whale Island. That's the name of the island. We know we have Seal Rocks and we have Bird Rocks, and we have a little Coney Island in Upper Newport Bay. This is Whale Island in Three Arch Bay. The main Three Arch Bay beach. And in the distance, we have Salt Creek Beach Park with the Ritz-Carlton Hotel looming at the cliffs. And you can see the lawn, the picnic area of the park. And then, but that isn't, the assumption by most people is that the Three Arch Bay beaches are 100% private. That isn't quite the case. The arrow here denotes a little secret behind the south cliff. This beach here, facing due south within Three Arch Bay, is a public beach that was dedicated in 1926 to the county as Lot A of tract number 966. There used to be an old rickety wooden stairway right here that was used by the residents of Three Arch Bay to get there, but it fell apart and they chose not to rebuild it. And there's an unimproved public easement for public access right here between these houses are in Monarch Bay and these houses are in Three Arch Bay. So we have an easement to get to this beach, but the problem is all it does is lead to South Lucinda, which is a private street. It doesn't lead to Coast Highway, so it's no good. It doesn't do anything. So at the current time, the only way to get to the public Three Arch Bay beach is to go on foot. And what you do is you park at Salt Creek Beach Park, which has got tons of parking, and then you walk up coast along the state tidelands in front of Monarch Bay, and then you scramble over the rocks and you can get to that little beach. You'll see that why it's probably the most pristine beach in the entire county when you see the video. I want to thank these individuals that were essential to helping put this program together and doing research and doing videography, and then also some of the groups that are essential in safeguarding and in maintaining the beaches that I've covered in the program. The fun is about to begin. About 6 months prior to my retirement in 2005, some of the Board of Supervisors offices requested that I do a history of the Harbors, Beaches, and Park System, which has now been renamed OC Parks. Most of the departments in Orange County have all been renamed OC Solid Waste, OC Public Works, OC Parks, OC Library. Harry Huggins, who is right standing in the middle of the aisle right there, and I ran around willy-nilly to what became a total of 66 locations documenting the acquisition history and some milestones for each harbor, beach, regional park, each historic site, each regional open space and trail system, scenic highways, and examples of nearly 100 community and local neighborhood parks and open spaces that our office established when the South County was all unincorporated, prior to the cities of Mission Viejo and Dana Point, Laguna Niguel, Laguna Hills coming into existence. But with the passage of time, some of those videos got lost. And so, for For the past year and a half, Harry and I have been re-videoing the lost footage, which is why I'm 13 years younger in some of the videos that you're about to see. In all, there are over 7 hours of professional video footage captured in 14 conveniently sized chapters for easy viewing. And the work was produced for the Friends of Harbors, Beaches and Parks, which is a nonprofit group, and Orange County Parks, which will eventually post the videos on as YouTube videos on their website. Friends of Harbors, Beaches and Parks hold the copyright and gave permission for this evening's viewing, and you are the very first public group to ever see any portion of the OC Parks history video. We're going to see Chapter 5 tonight, which goes from Smith Cliffs down to Salt Creek Beach. And you'll notice at the end some pretty extensive credits. With the help of others, I did my best to give credit to everyone who had a major role or hand in helping to build some part of the OC Park system. But to those who've been left out, you're not forgotten. One final thought before the video begins. This is the 100th anniversary of the founding of the Laguna Beach Art Association, what is now today Laguna Art Museum. And it is the oldest cultural arts entity in Orange County. So I wanted to implore all of you to immerse yourselves, your friends, your family, and particularly your children and grandchildren, in the various activities hosted by the museum this centennial year. Much of it has to do with our beautiful beaches and our richly textured topography that gained for our town the National Park Service's recent designation as a National Historic Landscape, the first entire city in the history of the United States to be so designated. The next public museum event is a film screening titled Laguna Art Museum at 100, which will be on Thursday the 19th of April and again on Sunday, April 22nd. And then on Sunday, June 24th, an exhibit will open titled Art Colony, the Laguna Beach Art Association, 1918 to 1935. And there are other events capped off with a centennial ball, which will take place on September the 29th, which is a Saturday at the Festival of Arts grounds. Call the museum now to make your reservations. They're required for all the events, even if they're free. 494-8971, but you know where to find the phone number for the Laguna Art Museum. Thank you. Now for the video about our shoreline. Yeah. It is January the 4th, 2018, and Harry and Eric have come out to video the last facility to be documented in the history of the OC Park system, otherwise known as Smith Cliffs Park. Silent era film stars once rode horseback in the moonlight along a secluded strip of a larger oceanfront property of which Smith Cliffs was once a part. During the Roaring 20s, Florence Pancho Barnes, the legendary cigar-smoking aviatrix, lived here, eventually blowing her fortune hosting lavish parties for her famous Hollywood guests that included the likes of John Wayne, Ramon Navarro, Eric von Stroheim, Mary Pickford, and others. A portion of the site was later bought by Lon Smith and renamed Smith Cliffs, a 10.4 acre property that remained a private, single-family residence estate until 1985. The 10.4 acre estate was ultimately subdivided into 26 custom residential lots, and it was covered with well over 100 major specimen trees. And since it was an unincorporated island, our offices required the developer to excavate and box all the trees and set them aside, go ahead and do the grading for the 26-foot lot subdivision, and then put the trees back into the property. And they consisted of Torrey pines and Canary Island pines and these magnificent Italian stone pines, which are now within this linear park that links Coast Highway to a little secret just beyond. Down at the end of the walkway that we've just traversed, we come to a little pocket park that is established here on the ocean front, looking down into Bootlegger's Cove. And one can imagine the roaring 20s during Prohibition when Pancho Barnes and her party guests would receive liquor. Actually, it's known that the liquor was dropped off here at Bootlegger's Cove to supply the whole city of Laguna Beach. The cove was only accessible at low tide on foot, but people can come in on paddle boards. Point Park in North Laguna Beach, which was actually established in March of 1975. It was the first park acquisition that occurred after I joined Harbors, Beaches and Parks, and it was at the behest of the leadership of former Supervisor Ronald Caspers, and then subsequently implemented under Supervisor Thomas Riley with the assistance of his dedicated staff assistant, Scott Ferguson, who later became a member of the staff of the Trust for Public Land. And this was an undeveloped promontory known as McKnight's Point, and I used to come here and hang out with my buddies when we were kids, and it was always under a family trust, but eventually in the early 70s they started selling off residential lots to be developed, and that mounted some pressure that we might lose this incredible scenic viewpoint that gives you a view of almost the entire South County coastline. And so with the assistance of the Trust for Public Land, they stepped in and purchased 2.3 acres of land consisting of 3 estate residential lots for approximately $1 million an acre, which was the most expensive per acre cost that the Harbors, Beaches, and Parks system had incurred up to that time. You can see in the distance Crescent Bay and the Twin Points estate owned by the Contino family, who have generously hosted many public benefit fundraisers. And in the distance, Laguna Bay and Aliso and Wood Canyons Wilderness Park and Laguna Coast Wilderness Park on the distant ridge lines. Now we have Harbors, Beaches, and Parks Commissioner James DeMarco from the 3rd District. Jim, how many years have you been on the commission?
Approximately 10 years. I was appointed in 1995 or 1996 by Supervisor Don Saltarelli.
And you've served under several supervisors, haven't you?
Yes. After Saltarelli, Supervisor Spitzer, and all subsequent supervisors.
which is a testimony to your effectiveness as a commissioner, because rarely do harbor commissioners get reappointed by so many successive supervisors. Jim, what is a major milestone that's been accomplished at harbors, beaches, and parks on your watch?
I think the most significant factor was a subject matter brought to us by what I would call activist citizens concerning the condition of the deeds as to some of the park parcels. In fact, those deeds did not have the language required or the language necessary to ensure that the parcels would remain parkland forever. And we were able to obtain the help of the Board of Supervisors and the county staff to change those deeds so that now that property will always remain parkland for future generations.
Thanks, Jim.
You're welcome.
It's March 20th, 2018, the first day of spring. And here we are to document the acquisition history and some important milestones in the life of Aliso Beach County Park, thought to be the most heavily visited of all county-owned beaches. The park consists of 9 discrete parcels of land, each acquired separately. First, the area at the south end of Aliso Beach, abutting Camel Point and where the concession building is currently located, was acquired by dedication from the Skidmores and others in their 1924 Coast Royale tract map, number 831. The total dedication on that map was for over 9 acres, most of it consisting of Camel Point and West Street beaches. It's thought to be the first, if not one of the first, public beach dedications in the history of the state of California. The area up coast of the Skidmore dedication remained under the control of the Thurston Trust. The Thurstons were the first homesteaders in Laguna, and their home was located on what is now the Aliso Creek Golf Course at the ranch at Laguna, formerly Ben Brown's Resort. The Skidmores made their private beach available to the public, just like James Irvine II did with his picnic grounds that later became Irvine Regional Park. Then, under the leadership of the Board of Supervisors chairman and their colleagues, Willard Smith and Willis H. Warner, on June 22, 1949, the Harbor District had purchased 1.5 acres from Thurston to establish a stronger public foothold on the beach. And then, at the behest of 5th District Supervisor Alton Allen, on April 26, 1961, the Harbors and Beaches District purchased another 0.63 acres from Thurston, which consisted of the old Post Road, threading its way up around the hill. Quickly followed by the purchase of 4 parcels totaling 7.73 acres from Roy Shipley on June 2nd, 1961. More than 6 years later, the Harbors, Beaches, and Parks District purchased a whopping 4.2 acres from Shipley to expand the parkland inland of Coast Boulevard. Followed by the final purchase on June 29, 1977, from Terrell of .4 acres where the old Aliso taco stand was located and the park restrooms are currently situated. Another major milestone was construction of the grant-funded inland Aliso Beach parking lot and recreation facilities seen here on the land acquired in 1967 and 1977. And linking Aliso Beach County Park to the Coast Royal neighborhood is this very popular remnant of the old Coast Road that predates the 1926 alignment of the modern South Coast Boulevard. The old Coast Road right-of-way was purchased in fee from the Thurston Estate in April 1961. It's the last remnant of the old Coast Road known to exist in all of Orange County. There were many milestones swirling about Aliso Beach County Park. Some of them included construction of the ill-fated Aliso Pier in 1970, thought to be the, if not one of the deepest water piers in California. It was built of reinforced concrete and funded by a grant from the State Department of Fish and Game, now called Fish and Wildlife Department. By the 1980s, the concrete started spalling, and salt water got into the structural rebar, causing a kind of bone cancer. We threw a lot of good money after bad money trying to save it, but Mother Nature won out. With 40% of the time the south swells pressuring the pier, and 60% of the time swells from the northwest. Well, unlike the wooden piers in Orange County, concrete doesn't flex, and so in the late 1990s, we saw the handwriting on the wall, and the Board of Supervisors authorized its demolition. It was a tricky job because the South Orange County Wastewater Management Agency's ocean outfall lays right alongside where the pier was situated, and the demolition team had to be very careful to safeguard the outfall. Although Aliso was a unique diamond-shaped pier enjoyed by many, some of whom used to sneak onto the gated pier during giant wave storms and jump off the tip into the abyss, there was a hidden blessing in its demolition. The landside and subaquatic sand surface returned to its original South Pacific-like splendor. And the park has been the site of the Victoria Skimboard World Championships for many years since the pier's demolition. There is a special section on Orange County piers, including Aliso, elsewhere in this History of OC Parks video program. Mother Nature also kept ripping out the southernmost beachfront parking lot. So we gave up and got a grant from the California State Coastal Conservancy to remove it and restore the beach. We tried 3 times to acquire Aliso rock, the giant lug of San Onofre breccia abutting Aliso Lagoon on the ocean side of Coast Boulevard. But the sellers always demanded more money than the independent appraisals. State law prohibits public agencies from paying more than appraised fair market value, so we didn't have the flexibility to pay the owners as much as they wanted. With the passage of time, Aliso Rock ultimately sold to a private party which carved it out like a pumpkin to build the Rock House. But the county did acquire a scenic easement over the remaining portion of the rock facing Aliso Lagoon, which, by the way, is soon to become the subject of a proposed lagoon restoration project. When I first joined OC Parks in 1975, the elusive tidewater gobies still inhabited the lagoon. The hopes are to entice them back. So there you have it, a rather complicated explanation of just how this popular beach park was established. It's a good example of the strenuous, painstaking, and tedious effort that went into acquiring all 66 facilities documented in this history of OC Parks for both past and future public enjoyment.
On July 18th in 1924, the Skidmore family, who actually operated the original Laguna Beach Water Company prior to the establishment of the Laguna Beach County Water District, recorded the Costa Royale tract map. And in so doing, they dedicated to the county its fourth oldest regional recreation facility, which is called Camel Point and West Street Beaches, together with an extensive series of vertical access ways and park parcels. And in fact, we suspect that the stairway between Coast Boulevard, just south of Camel Point Drive, is the first and oldest dedicated vertical access way in the state of California, still constructed today of native San Onofre breccia. And as you can see, arguably, this is probably, at least in my humble opinion, the most beautiful of all of our regional recreation facilities. With all due respect to magnificent places like Casper's Park and elsewhere, the richly vegetated bluffs, sitting here in the shadow of Aliso Peak, which is the highest peak in the Greenbelt, this close to the ocean, just literally a block inland. Consists of approximately 15 acres of land, and it is operated as an adjunct to Aliso Beach County Park, which is just around the promontory. And in the distance out there, separating this particular large grand cove from Aliso Beach, is Camel Point Rock itself, which no longer resembles the humps of a camel, but it did years ago before beach erosion wore it away. Which had its inception in 1924 with the dedication on the original Coast Royale tract map. And at that time, the county accepted a 15-foot wide easement in which this staircase is now currently located. And we embarked on a program jointly with the California Coastal Conservancy and the California Coastal Commission to improve this access way in the mid-'80s. And to my knowledge, we underwent the longest series of sequential lawsuits by people in the neighborhood attempting to prevent us from opening this beach, which we acquired in 1924. Construction was completed on the stairway in about 1989. And what you see is about 1/3 of the sandy beach area, with the remaining 2/3 around the promontory. And in the distance there, you see the famous Eagle Rock, for which Eagle Rock Way is named, which was the feeding platform for the last breeding pair of American bald eagles inhabiting Southern California before they left the site in the late 1920s. Very interesting history to it, because the beach was used by the public for many years by simply walking down the long stairway, which really only at the time had 246 stairs, but it seemed so many stairs that they called it 1,000 Steps Beach. And around 1979, the Homeowners Association here in 9th Avenue Cove, which is in the foreground, as opposed to Paradise Cove, which is the distant cove, hired a guard to discourage the public from using the stairs to the beach. A great deal of discord ensued, and eventually the county embarked on an elaborate program whereby we placed advertisements in all the major metropolitan newspapers of the United States, asking anyone who ever used 1,000 Steps Beach to please contact us to obtain an affidavit. When the process was done, which was undertaken by our then chief engineer in Harbors, Beaches, and Parks, Robert Young, we obtained about 1,800 affidavits from members of the public from all across the United States, indicating that they had used the beach as far back as 1905. And with that, we went into court. We were already in litigation with the Homeowners Association, and I think they saw the handwriting on the wall, and they entered into settlement negotiations with us. And with the assistance of the State Attorney General's office, Deputy Attorney General Jamie Jordan Patterson, we commenced negotiations and acquired the Sandy Beach area from the mean high tide, a considerable distance back, of dry sand, and then obtained a grant from the California Coastal Conservancy and reconstructed the stairway, so now it's 241 stairs, and the beach is very popular, and in the distance you see Three Arch Bay. That's where we're located, is just to the north of Three Arch Bay. The beach park had its inception then in 1984, when the acquisition process was complete. And now we're at our 5th oldest regional recreation facility, which was actually dedicated on a tract map October 29th, 1926, and it's known as Three Arch Bay County Beach. And it's a very isolated beach in a very pristine environment. We do own a vertical access way that leads to it. There are no pedestrian rights over the streets of the private community of Three Arch Bay, so the only legal way that the public can come to the facility is to park at Salt Creek Beach Park in the distance over near the Ritz-Carlton Hotel, and then to traverse along the shoreline, the public tidelands beaches in front of Monarch Bay, and then work their way over into this isolated and pristine cove. You can tell from the film here that it is extraordinarily well preserved. In fact, Three Arch Bay County Beach is thought to be the last of the original untouched beaches left in Orange County, showing very little sign of wear by virtue of light public attendance. We're actually witnessing some dolphins playing in the water because this is a little out of the way cove protected by the elements that allows abundant marine life to come in here and feed whales and dolphins and all forms of sea life. There are even some intact reefs offshore. The north end of Salt Creek Beach Park. And in the distance up at that promontory is where the county's Three Arch Bay Beach is located. And that's the way from this location is how the public can get there. This is a real interesting facility because when the California Coastal Protection Act was on the ballot many years ago, the APCO community developers, who were the successors to the Laguna Niguel Corporation, saw the handwriting on the wall and realized that it was most likely going to be approved by the voters. So what they did was they started mass grading the entire then Laguna Niguel area, which is now within the city of Dana Point, and set up huge clad lights and graded around the clock, just D9s running willy-nilly all over the place. That activity got such bad publicity that what ultimately happened was that a majority of the voters in all 58 California counties voted in favor of the California Coastal Protection Act. And so Salt Creek Beach Park isn't just one of the world's surfing hotspots. It played a huge role in promoting statewide coastal protection. People come from all around the world to surf at Salt Creek Beach Park, from Australia, Tahiti, New Zealand, Europe. It's a very, very popular surfing hotspot worldwide. And as we look down in this large grass area in the foreground, I should note that the park had 33.8 acres as of 1972. And how that came about was that when the Coastal Act passed, the APCO community developers management was incentivized to come to the table to negotiate with county staff culminating in a purchase agreement where Harper's Beaches and Parks paid APCO somewhere around $2 million for the land and to construct the parking lots and access facilities. And then further enhancements were done here in terms of restroom facilities and concession stand by county staff under the leadership of Ken Sampson to begin with, then Larry Lehman and Ralph Hudson. And then in 1987, as the Monarch Beach community was starting to develop, we obtained a 7.6 acre addition to the park from Stein Brief Group, who was the successors to the APCO community developers, and created this beautiful rooftop park, grassy field for people to play basketball, and there's even a giant chess set down there, and picnicking and shade structures and so forth. And when the Ritz-Carlton originally came forth with its proposal to build the Ritz-Carlton Hotel, the county required them to install these public access facilities to better link the hotel with the beach. And in fact, there's even a public pedestrian easement that comes right through the lobby of the hotel and out the back door to get here. And they installed some sculpture up at that gazebo in the distance, which I believe is a whale. And there was very extensive, prolonged litigation here on the APCO property in Laguna Niguel in order to get Salt Creek Beach County Park established. And that was almost exclusively funded by a single individual, the first woman city council member in Laguna Beach, Helen Keeley, put up the money and hired the prominent environmental attorney William Wilcoxon to litigate and sue the APCO community developers to bring them to the negotiating table. That's what set the stage for the Harbor's Beaches and Parks staff to step in and be the good guys and sit down with them at the table and to negotiate a purchase agreement for the improvements that I described earlier. And it was William Wilcoxon who also helped in other areas because he was the attorney for the Capistrano Beach Park and Recreation District. And in an earlier effort to make Pines Bluff Park go away across the Coast Highway from Capistrano Beach Park, it was Wilcoxon who took that all the way to the state Supreme Court, who unanimously ruled the perpetuity and the intention of the original dedication by the Doheny family for Pines Bluff Park. Here we're at Sea Terrace Community Park at Niguel Road and Coast Highway in Dana Point. It's about 22 acres of ocean view property fronting on Coast Highway. At the time the land was dedicated in 1992 by Stein Brief Group, we figured it was worth about $3 million an acre, or a total of $60 million. Now the point here is that very valuable, durable recreation assets have been established for the public in perpetuity, both in terms of dollar value, but also the value of mental and physical well-being. Here we are at the underpass of Coast Highway that connects Salt Creek Beach County Park with Sea Terrace Community Park, which demonstrates the integral relationship that we formulated by trying to link regional and community facilities. While we're standing in the Rose Garden of Sea Terrace Community Park, I wanted to mention that like Salt Creek Beach Park, even Laguna Niguel Regional Park, Crown Valley Community Park, Chaparosa Community Park, and Colinas Bluffs Open Space, Sea Terrace Park was originally embedded in the 1970 County Service Area Number 3 Master Plan of Local Parks and Recreation that was originally prepared by Len Forson Associates, namely my lifetime friend Tony Grasso, for the Laguna Niguel Corporation. We kept updating the master plan for local parks and recreation for County Service Area Number 3, which at the time was Laguna Niguel's sphere of influence. But later, the area became part of Dana Point. And we updated the master plans for all the other unincorporated communities to keep ahead of rapid development. And we used these board-approved documents to negotiate, extract the local and community parks and trails and open space from the developers. During the 1980s and the 1990s, there was a huge political uproar that emerged in Los Angeles County because a number of very well-established golf courses were being converted to intensified development for residential and commercial purposes. In order to assure the preservation of the open space in golf courses in Orange County from that time forward, and since the developers counted their golf course acreage as part of their overall open space requirement for their proposed planned communities, the county imposed a requirement whereby the developers dedicated a golf course scenic easement over their golf courses. For example, at Pelican Hills on Newport Coast, the Monarch Beach Golf Course in Dana Point, Tierras Creek Golf Course in Santa Margarita, and others, to assure the preservation of that open space in perpetuity in order to comply with the requirements of the California Environmental Quality Act.
This program is among the efforts recognized in the Lifetime Achievement Award from the President of the United States in 2015. Supplemental information on the history of the Orange County Park System is included in the California State Review's of Eric Jessen by Joanna Brand, published in 2008.
Can somebody switch those lights? I forgot to do that before I walked up here. Eric is going to answer some questions. If somebody can get that light for me, that'd be wonderful. Eric, come on up to the front, Eric. And we will use this time for questions for Eric.
Give it up for Eric Jessen.
There are some individuals in this room that were critical. The videographer is standing in the aisle. That's Harry Huggins. He asked me apologize to you because we refused to use a tripod when we were making these videos. And then diagonally behind him, there is Ralph Hudson's successor, the manager of design and planning for Orange County Parks. That's
Don't
Scott.
point that,
Here we have Jonathan Jenkins right here, who is the studio that made the video. And then the real gutsy accomplishment of all of this wouldn't have been possible without Rick Sherry, who is in the back right there, who actually kept track of all of our parkland and beach plans as we had inch by inch. And then the guy that stuck the requirements to the developers without, or otherwise their track maps wouldn't get approved, was Vic Pulaski, who is sitting right next to me. Yeah, so it was a team effort, and critical to that as well was the citizen involvement, because particularly in the Laguna area, entities like Laguna Greenbelt Incorporated, which was a pioneering organization long before we had the Laguna Canyon Conservancy or the Laguna Canyon Foundation. Nevertheless, those groups and individuals like Ann Weisbrod that worked on Smith Cliffs and just hammered and hammered and hammered to get the city to accept it and open it up. It was barricaded. In fact, I think the concrete walkway that we required the developer to install at Smith Cliffs had been torn out. They were trying to make the whole thing look like it didn't exist. So we have that kind of involvement that is unique to this city, and even though Salt Creek Beach is not within the boundaries of the city of Laguna Beach, it just so happened that Chapter 5 included it, and I'm glad it did, because it discloses the role of citizens in Laguna that play critical roles outside of the boundary of the city, like Helen Keeley, who spent hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars in the 70s. A single woman on our city council put her money up where her mouth was to fight the Abaco community developers to bring them to the negotiating table. And our William Wilcoxon was the attorney mentioned in the video. His office was in Laguna Beach as well. He lived here. So it was a really a wonderful experience, and it keeps going on. Any questions?
Eric,
Yes.
what is Victoria Beach?
Hold it 1 inch from your mouth if you, when you use this, by the way. 1 inch.
Closer.
Eric,
1 inch.
what is Victoria Beach? Is it a city beach then?
Yes, it's a city beach. The South Laguna was unincorporated until it annexed into the city in 1987.
Yeah.
And Smith Cliffs was unincorporated, just like Emerald Bay is. That's why this video covers county-established facilities.
Okay.
Within the boundaries of Laguna Beach, we stepped in to buy Crescent Bay Point Park because the definition of original facility was 100 acres or more, but there was one exception. There was a policy exception for oceanfront properties, because you could have a quarter-acre oceanfront park that gives you a view of 30 miles down the coast. So that's considered of regional significance. That's why we were able to do Crescent Bay Point Park. We'll get to the municipally owned beaches later. Rick Sherry is doing all that research right now. It's a huge job. It's an absolute huge job. You've got to look at every track map that was filed. It's going to be easy in the Laguna Cliffs subdivision of 1906, which is where Heisler Park is. That's a whole fabulous story unto itself involving the Jarrah's family, which we'll get to in the next round. I was real tempted to spill some of that stuff tonight, but we need to keep the second half spiced up as well. And it'll be interesting to see how Victoria Beach came about. Whether it was a altruistic developer that filed a track map and dedicated and offered a beach dedication like happened at Crescent Bay, or like at Camel Point, or whether it was a battle or a fight. We just don't know. You know, so. Yes, sir.
Did you say this video is available on YouTube, or if not?
It will be. It will be posted on the Friends of Harbors, Beaches, and Parks website and the OC Parks website.
Great, thank you.
Yeah. All 14 of them will.
We'll also have it on our YouTube page, Laguna Beach History. If you search for that on YouTube, we'll have it on our page as well. Is that a question?
Yes, Polly.
Ready to know.
Okay, I have a question. Aliso Beach, just south of that, the house that's up on the hill that they're doing work on right now, do you know who owns that house? Because I've heard it was the Gucci family, blah, blah, blah.
It's colloquially called the Gucci Mansion, but it really wasn't Gucci. It was Severn Wonderman, who was a very high-ranking officer in his corporation that controlled the sunglasses part of the thing, which was a huge part of the Gucci Corporation. The house was designed by Brian Jeanette, B-R-I-O-N, a prominent Newport Beach architect, who was extremely creative, because not only did he design the Gucci Mansion, which is an Italian villa, he designed the Rock House, which is an ultra-modern thing sticking out of a rock. You know, it was really kind of wild. We got to work with him, you know, one-on-one, because that was still all unincorporated, and, you know, so anybody building abutting a county beach had to go through the hoops with us, or they couldn't get their building permits.
Thank you.
Yeah, good question. Yes, sir. Oh, one more.
Hold it 1 inch from the
Okay.
mouth.
I can't recall, is it true or am I mistaken? Did the county try to give the city Thousand Step Beach for us to maintain it and lifeguard it and all that, or am I imagining?
You mean give it to the city?
Yes, or have the city take over responsibility?
It's a larger question than that. There had been some dialogue starting back actually before I retired in 2005 between the city and the county, with the potential idea of the city taking control of the county-owned facilities. This was precipitated obviously by the annexation of South Laguna. One train of thought is that, okay, if you're, you know, if everything is in the city, it should be under city control. One of the kind of the burrs that got under the saddle that gave impetus to that was the difference in rules. Dogs, no. Dogs, yes. Smoking, no. Smoking, yes. Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So we had two sets of rules. And to some extent, I think I don't know whether, but then on the flip side of that is that you have a regional harbors, beaches, and parks district, which is now called OC Parks, that's funded with property tax increment out of every property tax payer in the county. And they are the ones that fund Miles Square Regional Park, Carvin Canyon Regional Park, Irvine, O'Neill, Sunset Beach, Aliso Beach. So all the taxpayers in the county are funding these because they're regional facilities. That's why they're owned by the county. Just like the airport wouldn't be owned by the city of Newport Beach. It is owned by the county because it serves and is funded by a funding source out of everybody's wallet, not just the residents of Newport Beach. So, you know, it's kind of a flip side thing. It's not been resolved. I'm not really empowered to discuss anything I might know about the current status of discussions because I'm no longer a county official. Thank God.
Thank you.
Yeah. Trudy.
Thank you, Eric, for a wonderful presentation. I'm wondering about the connection with Helen Pines regarding Crescent Bay Park. And I thought she was very instrumental in making that come to fruition, but you didn't mention her.
No, because if we mentioned everybody, the video would have been like 104 hours long.
Got it.
Yeah. And what we really tried to do, I mean, I tried to highlight some of it in my PowerPoint, my little spiel at the beginning before the video started. But really, what we tried to do with the video is the acquisition history. It's the actual real estate transactions that took place. Ka-chink, ka-chink, ka-chink. decades in some cases to establish. Aliso in Wood Canyons Wilderness Park itself alone has 99 separate parcels of land, 99 separate real estate transactions, 99 separate sellers, 99, pardon my French, I won't say the word, very difficult negotiations. Very difficult. You would want to use an expletive for many of them. So it wasn't easy, and you know, there were so many people, even people in this room, that you know helped on those things. But what we were really trying to do is to document how the parks got established, or all the facilities, for the public to understand, and also for park rangers that haven't been hired yet, that haven't been born yet, that are going to get assigned at Irvine Park or Aliso Beach and have no clue how it got. These things just didn't happen. They took huge amounts of blood, sweat, and tears. So that was the main goal of the video.
We have one last question over here.
Sure.
Hi, Eric. You mentioned the history of you mentioned the piers at Aliso Creek. Can you touch upon the history of the piers along the Laguna coastline in general? I believe there's one or two others. And what happened to such so forth?
In one of the other videos, it's another chapter that includes Sunset Beach and Lower Newport Harbor and Upper Newport Bay and the Talbot Nature Preserve and the Santa Ana Rivermouth Beach. There's a special section on piers. And in there, they explain that in the very early days, they didn't haul lumber down Laguna Canyon or Aliso Canyon on buckboards. They hauled it on ships out of Anaheim Bay. And that necessitated the construction of piers. So the old McFadden Wharf in Newport Beach, our pier, which was right off of the gazebo next to Las Brisas restaurant. And that pier, you know, came and went a couple of times. It finally had its death knell in 1939. I think it was probably in pretty bad shape by then, but I think it was September 30th of 1939, the Great Chubasco of Southern California took place. That's a Portuguese word for hurricane. And that afternoon, in an absolute still air, the temperature in Laguna Beach shot up to 119 degrees. 119 degrees. And then the hurricane came and it ripped the holy everything. It didn't do that much damage in Laguna because we have very rugged, rocky cliffs to protect the development up above. But Newport, Sunset Beach, Huntington completely ate it, just completely ate it. But our pier went out in that storm. There was also a little pier or a pier of some sort in the Woods Cove area at one time, I believe. And then there was the little teeny one at Treasure Island, right there off of Gough Island. Those are some examples. Good question.
We're going to call the meeting, but I'm sure Eric will stay for any one-on-one questions. I want to thank all of you for spending part of your Tuesday evening with us, and thank you for coming.